Every anniversary, I used to watch the video of our wedding day, Melinda shared softly. Even years after the divorce, she admitted, those memories could still move her to tears. In the early years of her marriage to Bill Gates, life felt filled with simple joys and quiet affection. Their wedding, held in 1994 on the island of Lanai in Hawaii, was intimate and modest, far from the lavish affairs one might expect for a rising tech billionaire. At first glance, the marriage of Bill and Melinda Gates seemed to be everything the modern world dreamed of. Two visionaries. Two philanthropists. Two people building an empire not only of wealth but of hope. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they touched millions of lives. For decades, they were seen as the gold standard of a power couple, brilliant, generous, united. The phrase "life after Bill Gates" wasn't something anyone could imagine Melinda having to face. To many, their bond appeared bulletproof, shielded by billions and a shared vision to change the world. But what the world missed, and what Melinda Gates now quietly reveals, is that even the strongest-looking marriages can hold hidden fractures. Sometimes the greatest betrayals aren't explosive. They unfold slowly, almost imperceptibly, through the everyday absences, the words left unsaid, the trust chipped away bit by bit. In private, Melinda Gates lived a story far different from the fairy tale so often portrayed in glossy magazines. The woman who stood smiling beside her husband at global summits was also the woman waking from restless dreams of a collapsing house, a mind grappling with silent fears she dared not yet name. The real Melinda Gates story is not simply one of a marriage ending. It is a meditation on how even a woman of extraordinary power and grace must sometimes face the most intimate betrayals alone. And as we step into her journey, we begin to understand. Behind the billions, behind the smiles, behind the headlines of the Bill and Melinda Gates divorce, there was a very human story, waiting quietly to be heard. Every anniversary, I used to watch the video of our wedding day, Melinda shared softly. Even years after the divorce, she admitted, those memories could still move her to tears. In the early years of her marriage to Bill Gates, life felt filled with simple joys and quiet affection. Their wedding, held in 1994 on the island of Lanai in Hawaii, was intimate and modest, far from the lavish affairs one might expect for a rising tech billionaire. Melinda often recalled a particularly endearing moment from that day. Standing by the towering wedding cake, Bill, looking slightly lost, didn't just cut a ceremonial slice for his bride. Instead, in his characteristic awkwardness, he began cutting and serving pieces to all the guests. I just laughed, Melinda remembered, her voice tinged with affection. It was so Bill, not knowing what to do, but doing it with the best of intentions. Their early marriage was filled with such memories, moments of genuine connection, laughter, and learning to navigate life together as partners. When Melinda became pregnant with their first child, Jennifer, it was a time of great happiness, but also new challenges. She gained over 75 pounds during her pregnancy, double the typical recommendation. This led to an unexpected moment of tension with her doctor, who, to her surprise, seemed more concerned about how she would feel about losing the weight after giving birth than about her and her baby's immediate health. I asked him if he was worried for my health or for the baby, she recounted. He said, "No, I'm worried you'll be upset about the weight afterward." And I just laughed and said, "You don't have to worry about that. I promise I won't be mad." After that, things between us were fine. It was a glimpse of Melinda's practical, composed spirit, one that would serve her through far greater trials later on. The day Jennifer was born, Melinda woke up early, suspecting her water might have broken. She and Bill headed to the hospital, but after an examination, the doctor suggested she could go back home. Labor had not yet truly begun. Melinda chose to stay at the hospital out of caution, while Bill, ever the devoted worker, went into the office. I spent most of that day alone, feeling relaxed, excited, Melinda recalled. It wasn't until late afternoon that labor truly started. Bill returned in time for the delivery, but there was a minor mishap. The smell of pastries lingering on his sweater, something he had eaten on the way, made Melinda, in the throes of labor, feel nauseous. I told him to take it off immediately, she laughed. The smell was unbearable. These small vignettes, tender and deeply human, painted a portrait of a marriage that, at its core, was built on real affection and shared life rather than public spectacle. In the years that followed, as they welcomed two more children, Rory and Phoebe, Bill and Melinda managed to shield much of their family life from the public eye. Together, they nurtured a home that, despite their growing fame and fortune, remained focused on the simple, grounding realities of parenthood. But even as they built a family and a world-renowned foundation, the seeds of distance were quietly being sown. Busy schedules, missed dinners, separate orbits that, slowly and almost imperceptibly, began to pull them apart. Looking back now, Melinda admits that she didn't always notice the shift at first. Life was full of work, full of obligations, full of good intentions. But sometimes, even the fullest life leaves certain spaces empty, spaces that love alone, without honesty and presence, cannot fill. Toward the end of 2019, I started having disturbing dreams, Melinda confessed. Dreams about a beautiful house collapsing, falling into ruin. They scared me. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake them. Those dreams haunted her. Vivid, unsettling visions of a once solid structure crumbling without warning. At the time, Melinda tried to dismiss them. Life was busy, filled with good work, family milestones, and the constant hum of public expectations. But dreams have a way of speaking truths that waking minds resist. Still, she hoped. In February 2020, determined to reconnect and to recapture something of their old intimacy, Melinda proposed a trip to New Mexico, just the two of them, away from their obligations and carefully managed public lives. From the outside, it was framed as just another vacation, a quiet escape. Throughout the trip, they tried to recreate the familiar rituals of closeness. Shared meals, quiet walks, long conversations. But beneath the surface, an uncomfortable distance lingered, palpable and heavy. On the final night of the trip, in a conversation marked by honesty and sadness, Melinda made a decision she had long been avoiding. There was no shouting, no accusations. Upon returning to Seattle, they continued working together, appearing side by side at events, collaborating on projects through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But privately, they led separate lives. Melinda moved into a different home with their youngest daughter, Phoebe. In August 2020, I told Bill that I wanted a divorce, Melinda said, her voice steady yet heavy with memory. It had taken months, years, really, to reach that point. Years of trying, of hoping, of working through therapy and private struggles. Years of weighing the love they had once shared against the undeniable truth. The marriage could not be saved. After the conversation, Melinda got into her car alone. She pulled into a parking lot, turned on the radio, and the familiar chords of Willie Nelson's Always on My Mind began to play. It was a song they had often listened to together. A ballad of regret, of things left unsaid, of love acknowledged too late. And there, behind the wheel, Melinda broke down, sobbing into her hands. It was not just grief for the end of a relationship, but for the dreams they had built together, the life they had imagined, the family they had nurtured, the future that would now split into two separate paths. The next day, they met again, determined to face the hardest part, telling their children. They spoke carefully, choosing words that would honor the love that had created their family, while being honest about the realities that now made separation necessary. After the conversation, they were hungry, physically and emotionally drained. They decided to do something they had done countless times over the years, go out and grab burgers together. But even in that familiar ritual, the difference was undeniable. The easy camaraderie that had once accompanied such moments was gone, replaced by a heavy, almost sacred silence. Sometimes, it's the quietest moments, not the arguments, not the dramatic exits, that mark the true end of a marriage. The simple act of buying a hamburger together, knowing it may be one of the last times, can hurt more than any shouted words. In the months that followed, the process of finalizing the divorce proved more grueling than Melinda had anticipated. Although the public statement issued in May 2021 spoke of continued shared work and mutual respect, the private negotiations were far from easy. Bill is one of the toughest negotiators on the planet, Melinda acknowledged. At times, the discussions triggered deep anxiety. There were moments, she admitted, when I thought I might have a panic attack. Details of the settlement remain closely guarded, a testament to the careful, deliberate way both sides managed the public narrative. No messy court battles. No tabloid headlines beyond the initial shock. But within the walls of their private discussions, it was clear. The dissolution of a life so intertwined would never be clean or painless. By late 2020, the decision was final. And as the papers were signed and the public announcement crafted, Melinda stood at the threshold of a life she had not asked for, but one she was determined to shape on her own terms. Letting go, she realized, was not an act of anger. It was an act of profound self-respect. An act of recognizing that sometimes, even love, even history, even shared dreams, are not enough to hold two people together if the foundation of trust has been irrevocably broken. There was trust broken, Melinda admitted quietly. Bill acknowledged that he had been unfaithful during our marriage. It was a truth she had carried for years, tucked away behind the poised public image, behind the smiles at charity events, behind the quiet strength she projected to the world. Infidelity. The word itself was almost too clinical, too neat to capture the chaos it leaves behind. For Melinda, it wasn't about a single act of betrayal. It was about the slow, painful erosion of trust, the constant second-guessing, the invisible wounds that never fully closed. During their marriage, whispers had occasionally surfaced in the media. Rumors of Bill's connections with other women, unsettling reports about meetings that blurred professional and personal boundaries. At the time, Melinda chose silence, chose to believe, chose to hope. In 2014, facing the mounting weight of doubt, she turned to therapy, seeking help not only to navigate the fractures in her marriage, but to find clarity within herself. "I believed I could forgive him," Melinda said. "And for a long time, I tried." She worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been broken, to patch the invisible cracks with determination, compassion, and sheer willpower. There were no public scandals, no dramatic implosions, just the private labor of a woman trying to hold together a life, for herself, for her children, for the legacy they were building. But some things, once broken, cannot be restored. There came a moment when Melinda realized that the marriage, no matter how much love still existed in fragments, could not give her the safety, the honesty, the true partnership she deserved. Forgiveness is noble, but forgiveness, without genuine change and restoration of trust, often becomes another quiet betrayal of oneself. Bill Gates, in a rare moment of personal reflection during a 2023 interview, acknowledged that the divorce was his greatest personal regret. But for Melinda, the act of walking away was not about punishing Bill. It was about protecting the parts of herself that had begun to disappear under the weight of constant disappointment. In stepping away, she chose self-preservation over self-sacrifice. She chose to honor the version of herself that still believed in honesty, in loyalty, in love, that did not ask her to shrink. And though the pain of betrayal would never fully vanish, Melinda began to understand something profound. Healing is not about forgetting the wounds. It's about learning to live beyond them, stronger, wiser, freer. "There were days I thought I wouldn't make it," Melinda said. "But little by little, I started to find my way back to myself."